That brings us nicely to, is the US going to invade Canada? And Greenland as well, why not?
I think that they will end up getting them, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. I think...
Take me through that.
Well, the Canadian military is not in any position to do anything. It's incredibly degraded on a level of personnel and equipment. They have some decent special forces, as do all Western countries, but these are always the exception and not the rule. Most Canadians are living a stone's throw away from the American borders. And if the American military were to simply show up and surround Ottawa, Montreal, and Vancouver and say, look, can we please deal with this reasonably? There wouldn't be much that can be done about it. So militarily,
yes, I mean the
Canadians are in a hopeless position.
The Canadian government came that close, apparently, to falling to a bunch of truckers, unarmed truckers.
There you go.
So I would imagine the 101st could probably do it.
So militarily, Canada is not really able to do very much.
Yes.
But
I mean, it's
Denmark, Greenland.
But I mean, the whole thing for a while with Canada is you didn't need to invade them because they were trying to do whatever the Americans were doing more. So when
they
the Americans
drew
were
far
woke,
too close to China.
When the Americans were, they put up Justin Trudeau, who tried to out-woke the Americans.
Yes.
They wanted to be good vassals. And it's only because the programming has changed.
Yes. They thought that Trump was an exception and wouldn't last.
Yes.
So Trudeau survived the first Trump term. Okay? But then they decided, well, we need to balance. And essentially, they've allowed the Chinese way too much influence in Canada. And this needs to stop on the one side. Then there's a natural resource part of this, whereby the Canadians have the ability to be exporting a lot more energy and a lot more natural resources, but their green programming prevents them from doing so.
And if you're in a great power game with China,
you need all of the
can't
resources.
afford to have energy and resources sitting on the wayside.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then there is a transportation question. The Russians managed to keep open something called the Northeast Passage. This is basically the waterway around the Arctic. And they export from there to Asia, and it's a nice cost-saving measure for them. And it allows a lot of the natural resources that they have in the far north to get to markets quickly
so this
and cheaply.
spits out in between Greenland and Canada, does it?
No. That would be the Northwest Passage.
Oh, what's the Northeast Passage?
The one that Russia controls, that I was describing.
Where does that connect?
And the Northwest Passage, which is what the Americans want to open,
yes,
is the one that goes around Canada and passes next to Greenland. Okay?
Okay, the Northeast Passage is connecting Russia with the rest of the Asian Sea, the Chinese Sea.
Exactly. I mean, just look at the Earth as a circle, and you see that the Americans and the Russians and the Canadians are just right next to each other around the Arctic.
Yes.
And so the Americans want that piece. And there is a piece involved there with attacking with missiles and defending with missiles, because the missiles will go around the Earth's curvature. So it makes sense to control more of that real estate. The Canadians are partners in that defense, and they will allow the Americans to base whatever they want there. But
they're just
why bother?
Yes.
Why bother with dealing with another government in Ottawa, as opposed to just a state government?
If the US were to literally just take Canada, it would so completely shatter this liberal New World Order that we've had since World War II. Because America does have a lot of hard power, but a lot of soft power as well.
Yeah.
It can just tell a lot of countries to do things.
Yes.
If it were to militarily take Canada tomorrow, I can't see that soft power element holding up.
No, I think soft power is a complete illusion. I think soft power is an illusion. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. There is speak softly and carry a big stick. You can speak softly because the stick is very big. So there is cultural influence, yes, but that is very difficult to trace correctly. For example, the reason only Westerners are vulnerable to wokeness is because the pre-programming that Christianity instills in people.
Yes.
If you don't have a conception of a holy victim, and if you don't have a conception of original sin, there is no way you can listen to wokeness. This is why wokeness outside of the West only infects the most extreme liberals, who are themselves also drawing on Christian traditions.
Oh, I know the Asians find woke a complete joke.
Exactly. Except for if you, in most cases that I've come across Indians who have been programmed to be more Western than Westerners. How do you do that? By adopting wokeness. So, aside from these exceptions, soft power is very hard to quantify and define.
So all this stuff about Trump calling, he kept on calling Trudeau
The
Governor Trudeau.
Yes.
I mean, how do you think he would actually go? Is it likely to happen in this term?
Look, I think that Canada and Greenland will end up becoming part of America. I don't know how,
Okay.
but I think this will happen.
But you think that Trump is in meeting rooms with very clever people who know about this stuff, and he said, "I want Canada, I want Greenland, find a way to make it happen," and they're working on the how.
Yes. I think this is a serious policy that has support from the administration.
Because a lot of people just don't take this seriously at all.
I don't understand why they don't take it seriously. It's the most natural thing ever.
And I suppose if we continue the logic through, the reason he's pushing Europe so hard to increase their defence spending is because he has no interest in taking over any parts of Europe. Britain is not going to be made a 51st state.
No.
He basically wants them to grow up and move out.
To a large extent, but if he has an accord with Russia, they've essentially moved out into the garage.
Yes.
The other point on Canada and Greenland is that think about Scotland.
Okay.
Scotland had to be annexed by the English and be made a part of the United Kingdom, and the crowns had to be unified because Scotland kept on siding with the French against England.
Ah, right, yes.
And the natural geopolitical position of the Scots would be to align with somebody slightly further away, England, in the same way that Portugal naturally aligns with England against Spain.
Yes.
Because that's how they stay independent. So these structures, these things in geopolitics are firm. They're real.
Yes.
They're not based on ideology.
And both Australia and Canada have let themselves get too into bed with China.
Quite.
And it's unacceptable, so that has to end.
Exactly.
Well, actually, it's the same thing he does with... I mean, if you listen to his complaints about the Suez Canal, it was all about how they're preferencing China.
Yes. About the Panama Canal.
Oh, it's Panama Canal, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're in a competition with the Chinese and you have this manufacturing behemoth that can produce more ships, more planes, more missiles faster, regardless of the quality.
And there's Chinese compounds springing up all over Canada.
So you must do something about it.
Australia is even more in bed with China than Canada is. I mean, significantly so. I mean, there's Chinese compounds all up and down all over Australia. Can that be allowed to continue?
They're going to have a problem. They're going to have a problem. Once the Canada problem is sorted, the Aussies are going to be next. And this regime change apparatus that is in existence, that is now being reined in and tamed to serve the purposes of a new order, this is going to be used, and it's going to be used globally. And it's going to be used against uppity allies more than against rivals.
So actually, this whole thing in the last few days about Trump saying he is open to joining the Commonwealth
makes sense.
Because that's kind of what he wants. He kind of wants Canada, Australia, and you might as well take Britain as well while you're at it then.
And New Zealand.
And New Zealand, yeah. I don't think he's probably that interested in India. I mean, they might have some use, but essentially... the Commonwealth is just a sort of microwave meal version of what he's going after anyway.
It's the European Christian world. It's the European Christian world. Some people are going to hear this and hear only white. Fair enough. I don't care. I'm from Lebanon, so it's really not, we're part of the West in a way, but that's a different
I
story.
don't care if people call me whatever names.
But it's the European Christian world realizing that this is a conflict between different civilizations and different cultures. And that by virtue of being of a Latin mind and following the Christian religion, these countries are naturally aligned, and that they have civilizational rivals in the form of Islam and China, and to a much lesser extent India, that need to be dealt with, because otherwise you will be overwhelmed.
Well, it is, yes.
So this is the reality of the situation that we're in. We are always in some kind of civilizational conflict. The bet that Trump is making is that the Russian civilization, which is orthodox, much less Latin, quite different, more mystical than the Latin tradition, can be brought into the fold. And that makes sense. Because right now, today, there's no reason for an Orthodox Catholic conflict, really. Protestantism, that's a different story. It's a long-winded joke without a punchline. I mean, transgender bishops in the Church of England, I don't even want to touch that. So Protestantism can be safely dismissed. The real religions of the West are Orthodoxy and Christianity, are Orthodoxy and Catholicism. You have a Catholic vice president. That's very interesting. You have Protestantism imploding. You have an empire that is in need of a religion again to replace the Christian heresy called wokeness and the Christian heresy called Marxism.
Yes.
So if you want to think about religious and geopolitical terms, which you always should always factor religion into your analysis, then some kind of Orthodox Catholic reconciliation.
Because people are going to adopt a religion one way or another. So
the human mind is religious.
It's going to be something else.
Even Dawkins concedes that point. Dawkins concedes that the human mind is religious. You can't think about everything. It's not possible. You must therefore be dogmatic by default.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.